Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And man, just settle in, grab some popcorn.
Grab your butts.
Hold on to your butts. This is going to be a long Star Wars video. We have a new article up on piratesandprincesses.net from Insider WDW Pro, sort of refuting the claims that the Lucasfilm Civil War is not a thing.
Right. Now, keep in mind this is coming from an insider. We cannot confirm what is being said, other than the fact that he did make sure he went and cited, sources to back up what he's saying.
Yeah, because I think what we're seeing, with Star Wars, it's pretty obvious something is going on over there.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
there's no question. Even the people that were all like, oh, anybody who doesn't like Last Jedi are terrible people. Oh, you're wrong. There's a complete plan. By The Rise of Skywalker, they're like, oh, shit, there was no plan, which is what we kept telling you.
Yeah, and Pro is going to outline some of the stuff that went down behind the scenes and Bob Iger's role in this and his reaction to watching Star Wars.
We have some backup stuff.
Yeah, just going up in flames in front of them because there was arrogance. It was hubris. Disney thought they could buy Star Wars. It was going to run itself and just make infinite money, just print money.
You think they would have learned that after what they did with the Muppets. But but Pirates and Princesses is my Disney blog, actually Neon's too. It predates Clownfish TV by quite a while.
Yeah, it started out as a podcast 5 or 6 years ago and morphed into a blog and for a while we were actually partnered up with the Kingdom Insider.
Yeah, that was we kind of like that was the deal. We built it.
Yeah, we built the Kingdom Insider and got gone from the Kingdom Insider, and I don't care if I say it because it's exactly what happened.
And we have all the emails and evidence to prove this.
Yep, and we got the good lawyers, so whatever.
Yeah,
whatever. So anyway, Pirates and Princesses now, there's been a lot of Star Wars news on there. Again, Geeky runs that mostly.
And people are like, oh, you're just negative. It's like, no, we're honest. And people keep equating honesty with negativity. And there's a difference. And I don't know why people keep saying that. If it's something they don't want to hear, it's automatically not, oh, you're just negative. No. I just call shit as I see it.
Disney fans are, in particular, very reluctant to believe any bad news about Disney. I mean, we've seen Disney do horrible things to their employees over the last couple months, and they still defend it. The fans still defend it. Like, you tell it to the former Disney cast worker who's out in the street, doesn't know where their next meal's coming from, that Disney's this happy, wonderful company. There's
family. Only if you can leverage it for money. Anyway, so let's go on about this. And again, like I said, this is coming from WDW Pro, who is a Disney insider. And this is and I know he was looking into this for a while. I think he was working on this one. He wanted to verify things. And I know he backed up stuff with actual citations from other articles as well.
So, disclaimer. The following is an in-depth look at Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm. No part of this article is intended to demean or disparage any person associated with Lucasfilm or Disney. While most of this article is based on historical facts and references, parts of the article are a well-intentioned opinion of the author.
Good job there, Pro.
There you go. That's good. So, talking about the history of Lucas and about how Disney plopped down $4 billion for Star Wars, which...
And that wasn't even the one they spent the most on. They spent more on Pixar, I think.
I think they did spend more on Pixar. Yeah. But the thing is that Star Wars, and I remember Sam Jackson saying at that time that was actually way low for Lucasfilm.
I agree with him.
I do agree, because if Lucasfilm had been run properly out of the gate, I mean, we saw The Force Awakens out of the gate made like $2 billion in the merchandise sales. People were hyped for more Star Wars, and they could have made their money back in just 2 or 3 movies.
Yeah, I think it was worth more than that, just the merch. At the time, before they ruined that.
Yep. So Kathleen Kennedy was actually put in charge by George Lucas. And, I remember hearing this news and thinking to myself, because I knew Kathleen Kennedy's name. She's on a lot of classic movies, Spielberg movies, Lucas movies.
Right.
I'm thinking, she's got the pedigree. Look at all these great movies she's worked on.
She clearly understands it. Not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what happened. So Pro says one of the first things Kathleen Kennedy did after taking charge of the company was to hire Kiri Hart to run the Lucasfilm
the one
Story
that
Group.
Disappeared, and for a while everybody's like, where did she go? Oh, they tell you where she goes, by the way, in the article. But
yeah, she disappeared. She disappeared. However, as a matter of how the story group would actually operate, the individuals brought on board for it were actually less interested in Star Wars and more interested in quotas for sex and race for the narrative moving forward. And we're seeing this with the High Republic. The High Republic is...
Oh, just that whiteboard.
Yeah.
The one that we've seen many times. I don't think I get to pull it up. Everybody who's watching these videos know what we're talking about. Where diversity was over, a real ending and, good characters.
The High Republic is kind of the end game of where I think the story group, again, personal opinion, where I think the story group wanted to go the entire time, which was to rewrite Star Wars for current year Portland audiences.
Yeah, the thing is, I am fully for diversity. Star Wars always kind of was diverse because it was like a bunch of aliens and things. So I've always been, 100% behind that. Girls in Star Wars, hell yeah, my favorite character of all time is Mara Jade. I mean, they've been bringing it for years with different kinds of characters. That's not the issue. The issue is there's a difference between having compelling characters and good stories and good backstories and reasons to be there, and having the characters we've gotten out of Lucasfilms lately. And that's the difference. Like if you're leading off with, look how diverse we are, look how representative we are, and that's all you're talking about, then you already lost people, because now it's not going to be about a good character who just happens to be diverse. It's about diversity, and then story comes around it. And that doesn't work. I'm sorry. And it's disrespectful to the people you're representing. Give them good characters they could look up to that happen to be diverse. Make them just fit in like they should.
So we have seen this in Star Wars, for the last couple of years now, where it was more important about, who was wielding that lightsaber.
Mm-hmm. What you have between your legs.
Right.
Etc.
And all the big stories being like, look, Star Wars has the first non-binary character. Well, who cares if the character's not interesting?
Right. And then they had characters like Finn who they just crapped all over. So,
This was to such an extent on the story group's part that Kiri Hart's very first action as head of the newly formed story group was to make sure only women were allowed to guide Star Wars. And here's a New York Times article on Kiri Hart keeping men away from the story group.
Okay, so it's New York Times.
Yeah, so it's from the Times. One of the implications was that Star Wars gurus at Lucasfilm were kept out of major decisions from 2012 to 2015, especially the development for the sequel trilogy.
Which makes sense, because it does feel like it's just the same thing, A New Hope all over again.
Right. Dave Filoni was completely kept out of any significant guidance. So Dave Filoni, who had been working closely with George Lucas,
that would be bad, because one, he's a dude, and two, he would want to carry on with like what Lucas wanted, and we don't want that. We have to completely, 180 from that.
Yep. So instead, writers with no Star Wars background like Carrie Beck and Rain Roberts were brought in to have campfire discussions with Hart about how to bring in female characters to the new Star Wars.
We see this with cartoons too. People who have no experience doing this and didn't like it in the first place are brought in to repurpose it for the new whatever, and then they ruin it.
So this was pitched to Disney executives as a way to bring girls into buying up Star Wars merchandise, and Disney was all too happy to believe that they could double Star Wars toy sales if only little girls would buy those instead of dolls.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about this for a second, because I remember, and I'm sure you do too, back when they were doing Marvel, originally like early on in the Marvel MCU, people were mentioning that you didn't get the Black Widow merchandise. Yeah. And then people were upset about that. Why wasn't it having a standalone movie? And basically it was called out because people that were behind the scenes thought that the female-led film wouldn't sell. They couldn't sell the toys, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was this push. They wanted to do more with girls, and Disney kept going with princesses. So this kind of would have been around the same time that was going down. They were being called out for it. You're shaking your head. You can't see them. They're shaking their head. Yes, your head. Yes. But that's around the same time when this was developed, that they were being called out for that stuff. So I'm sure it was pitched to them like, you guys were getting all this trouble from Marvel. Let's fix it with Star Wars. I will bet you on that.
Yeah, they were specifically looking. I'll tell you, because we pitched a couple animated series around this time. And they were, I'll be honest, they were looking mostly for shows, I believe, with female leads or strong female characters because of merchandise sales.
Yes.
That's what they wanted. We
actually, in our pitch, one of the reasons they looked at it and they optioned it was because we actually tied it in. Mostly what the High Republic's doing now, in a way, we tied into that. We were going to use like websites and stuff and extra things with a comic to kind of have different platforms to build it all up on multiple angles. And we had that in play then. And that's one of the reasons that they were interested in it. Strong female character. She was a diverse character, which now we wouldn't be allowed to write because how very dare us.
Yeah, but the thing is that wasn't the plot. It just happened that was
right. I had no idea. You know? I mean, we made sure that we were trying to be more inclusive on our own, but the character was that way, but it wasn't about her being that way. No. Like, she was strong on her own, and that was a very, very minor, it was more of an adjective about the character than it was the character.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know firsthand that, yes, this was, for Disney, this was what they were looking for at that point in time. I could totally see somebody coming in and be like, you're going to sell the hell out of Star Wars figures to girls. You know?
Oh, yeah, especially when they were because they would have been dealing with that Marvel, backlash then.
And so then what they did is they overcorrected.
Yes.
I'm using the air quotes here. They overcorrected, made sure that like every movie going forward at that time that was planned was like female lead, so we can
yes.
sell
And how many
female
Rose
action figures.
Tico and Holdo figures were on the shelves for months? I mean, because you missed the key ingredient. You had to make the characters ones people liked. Yeah. And these were diverse. You did a disservice to the diverse characters you're claiming to be promoting because it needs to be done. You're not wrong. There needs to be diversity, but you're just doing a disservice to these people because you're making the characters completely unnecessary and unlikable. You're not even giving them good backstory, good reason to be there. They just show up and are better than everyone.
Yeah, so I mean, we saw this manifest, and Pro brings this up, that we saw actual Lucasfilm employees have Luke Skywalker's face crossed out in the workplace.
Yeah, I bet they regretted that decision on airing that.
They said despite this being the majority of their consumer demographic being Caucasian males, the story group and new Kathleen Kennedy hires wanted nothing to do with old Star Wars. Their ridiculous and petty hatred of people groups went so far as to have them drawing a giant red X on Luke Skywalker. And we saw this not just in this poster, but we saw it with their treatment of Luke. Not even in The Last Jedi, but in the animated shorts first, where they wanted to rewrite the narrative that Leia did things she never did. Even though Leia was an amazing character on her own, she was groundbreaking.
Yeah, Leia didn't need them to white knight for her. She did her. She white knighted for herself, bitches.
So they had Leia doing things she never actually did in the movie, but then they destroyed Luke Skywalker, made him out to be a dumbass in these cartoons. So it's almost like, let's indoctrinate the children to hate Luke Skywalker because he's stupid.
Yeah,
and push these other characters.
Let's tell girls they should be violent and smack guys.
Yeah.
For no reason.
They did. They had her like smacking Luke around and everything. It was stupid.
I'm like, because there's, besides that, the whole domestic abuse narrative wasn't smart.
Luke represented the patriarchy and male-dominated narratives, and for that reason, Mr. Skywalker would have to go. And we saw it. We saw it firsthand. The destruction. It was planned destruction of Luke Skywalker from the story group. They were like, no, we're going to put our characters in here and get rid of those nasty white patriarchal characters. It's our Star Wars now.
I can hear the ringing right now in the comments.
So J.J. Abrams was brought in to do The Force Awakens with Lawrence Kasdan, which I was excited about because I'm like, yeah, they got Lawrence Kasdan back.
Yes.
They got J.J. Abrams. This might be okay.
Oh, J.J. Abrams, I was like,
might be okay. Lawrence Kasdan, though, I was like, yeah, I'm okay with that. The guidance given to them from Kathleen Kennedy and the story group was simple. Make a new hope for a new generation.
Yes, that's exactly what they did. They just made a new hope all over again. And I want to point out that I was one of the first ones calling that shit out. Came out of the theater. First thing I said to you was, what the hell was that? I already saw this movie. It's called A New Hope. Isn't that exactly what I said?
Right. Yeah, you did.
I took so much shit for that, guys.
But basically, just make a new hope all over again, but make it a female protagonist.
Yes, the first half an hour of the movie looked different.
Yep.
And then it just became A New Hope.
From the beginning of the discussions, the notion of a woman at the center of the story was always something that was compelling, and not just at the center. We knew that in addition to Leia, who was a critical piece of the puzzle, we wanted to have other women, not necessarily human, but female characters in the story. And they did. They basically had female Yoda.
Wait, here's what's a little bit confusing. When you bring up about aliens, it's always been diverse because aliens, they get mad and say, that doesn't count. Aliens don't count. But then he just said, we wanted women in the story, not necessarily human, but female. Which one is it? Would you pick a side? Because when people point that out to you, to these people that are like always having a hissy, it's always been diverse. They've always had all these different races and aliens and different things trying to show diversity. You all had a fit about it because you said, well, those don't count. But now they're going to use this quote as, it's all,
Right.
We're trying to be diverse.
Trying to be diverse. But yeah, basically remake it in our image. So we saw this right out of the gate. The very first thing they did. Well, one, they deleted the expanded universe. They cherry-picked certain characters.
Oh, and they're bringing it back now when they're in trouble.
When it's failing. They deleted the expanded universe, and immediately they wanted to remake Star Wars, but with a girl instead of Luke Skywalker. I mean, and then, they didn't even get Han, Luke, and Leia back together.
Which they do mention in the article.
Yeah, Pro brings that up, and then he said, well, surely in the next one, we're going to get a flashback or something. And that's what I thought, too. I'm like, we'll get a flashback scene or something with the three of them together, because that's what fans were promised.
People kept asking that, and that's what they kind of implied in the trailers, that you were getting about, we're home. And people are like, we're going to get the original cast. People expected it to be handed over to new characters. That was not something that they didn't expect, but they expected to at least have a authentic passing of the torch, a respectful passing of the torch, and that you at least see the cast together, because one thing that they seem to miss with the new trilogy until they tried to fix that in the very last movie is that what made Star Wars work originally was because it was an ensemble. It was like you had your leads, but they always kind of worked together, and they were together, and it was like, let's get in the truck and cause some shit. It was like, you could relate to it. It's you and your friends, and you're kicking ass and taking names. And then they turned around and just made everybody disconnected. And there wasn't, and you need that connection. And it was, the stories weren't intertwined like they should have been. And they tried to retcon that in the last film, but by then, the damage is already done, and you can't put them together in the final film and call it a new team. And I think it didn't feel like Star Wars for that reason. And then your old team, you just kind of kept them apart.
Yeah,
At least you're consistent in that shit.
So it said, meanwhile, Kennedy was beginning to have director issues. And we saw this. I would have been like, what the hell is going on? Why is she firing people all over the place?
We did. We were like, they always kept saying creative differences. I'm doing air quotes. Creative differences.
It sounds like the story group is at the center of those creative differences.
And that would explain why Pablo Hidalgo felt he had the right to go and mock YouTubers and fans, and why all these people, which we're going to talk about in a minute, felt they had the right to mock fans.
Because they think they're Star Wars. I am the sentence.
Yeah, that's right.
Behind the scenes, Rogue One was a mess. It was time to get rid of the current leader on the film. But beyond that, there was a problem of Colin Trevorrow. Unbeknownst to Star Wars fans and cinema journalists, the story group had been working with Rian Johnson on the big flip of expectations for the current trilogy. Not surprising given how they feel about Luke Skywalker.
That would explain why there's an X on that.
Yep. Just like how fans have been surprised before that Darth Vader was Luke's father, this time the surprise would be that Luke was a failure and Rey was a nobody who would rise to take his place. Take his place as the hero of the galaxy. Take his name, too. Take his lightsaber.
Well, this next part's interesting. Take the dog.
Take his house. While Abrams had worked with Kasdan on The Force Awakens, Johnson was working with the Lucasfilm Story Group in a way that not even J.J. Abrams was aware.
Right. So for weeks, Rian Johnson would meet with Kiri Hart's story group behind closed doors, planning out a detour for The Last Jedi. This right here tells us what we've been telling you guys the entire time. There was no overarching story. They were not working together. As much as they try to say, oh, that's not true, we were working together. Bullshit. The proof is in the pudding. The evidentiary support is the movies are disjointed. They're not connected. The story doesn't flow like the Force, and it's all over the damn place. And then it was just like you're trying to make A New Hope all over again, and then you do this middle thing that is, who the hell knows what that's supposed to be, and then you have the Rise of Skywalker, which we still haven't watched, by the way, which tries to retcon the whole damn thing, make it seem like it was meant to be one thing, to the place that even supporters were like, by Rise of Skywalker, saying, nope, they're right, there was no plan here. And if this was the case, is what Pro has discussed, then it was behind closed doors, and there was no plan here. It was subverting everything.
So this is interesting though, that the story group was working on, if it's true, that the story group was working with Rian Johnson on their own little...
which makes sense. Yeah. I mean, just in the way things flowed. That would actually add up.
Completely disjointed. So back to the director issue. The problem was that the director for Episode 9 needed to know what the heck was happening.
Obviously.
Yep. With Abrams and Kasdan blind to what Johnson and the story group were doing, Colin Trevorrow would receive an outline first for The Last Jedi. What he saw shocked him. And immediately he started making calls. I can't make Episode 9 without Luke Skywalker, he said. I have to have Luke Skywalker. The fans are going to go berserk if there's no Luke Skywalker.
In the Skywalker saga? Yeah, imagine that.
The answer back to him from Kiri Hart and Kathleen Kennedy was a resounding no. He would have to use the current Last Jedi concepts to finish the trilogy. Confused, he reached out to Mark Hamill to gain leverage, but Hamill had zero influence with this group.
We all know Hamill was not happy with the way this went down.
Well, Pro says that. He said Hamill himself was disgusted with his role in Episode 8. So Trevorrow began working on a different idea, one essentially to resurrect Luke Skywalker, explain the Force Ghost concept, and have all the old Jedi join together to help Rey defeat the Sith. And that actually, his version of Episode 9 would have been infinitely better, I think.
Right, more in line.
I mean, you can't undo The Last Jedi. And I think trying to undo it is putting a Band-Aid on a stab wound. I think they should have just went with wherever they're at and tried to,
there was ways
make it make sense.
There was ways they could have undone it when they did the movies, but they didn't do that then. So now it's like there's a debate whether they're going to undo it or not. Personally, I don't think they're going to, because I think that Disney's not going to admit wrong, because they never admit wrong. They'll just try to step over it. Yes, and in some ways, as long as they keep having this, these divisions, it's going to be all over the place. They need to pick a side and stick with it. Hopefully, they pick the right side. But continue.
Upon finding out that Colin Trevorrow wouldn't let Luke Skywalker go, Trevorrow was told it was he who would have to go.
Then he was announced as being gone for creative differences. Rogue One, creative differences. The Game of Thrones guys, creative differences.
Yeah, so it all clicks together, guys. You put this information up next to what we know publicly, and it all starts to snap into place. There might not be a like formal civil war going on here, but there clearly are factions that are working independently of each other and in some regards against each other. You know, obviously, because it's not cohesive. Lucasfilm is not cohesive.
No, it never. This whole trilogy wasn't cohesive.
Then came the fall of Lucasfilm with the release of The Last Jedi, while they attempted to steer the narrative online and through influencer reviews by Access Media.
Which we said.
Yep, the fan reaction was quickly realized The Last Jedi had not only divided fans, but had failed financial expectations dramatically.
And not even just the film, everything like the sales of the DVDs, the toys, etc.
Yep. The new talking point was put out that the Empire had seen a lower box office haul.
Oh, yeah. They keep trying to do that. They keep trying to say, well, The Empire Strikes Back is the number one movie, but it had all these same issues. And it's like, bullshit.
Yeah. Quickly, and he talks about how there weren't as many movie theaters back then. They didn't have as many screens. I mean, a lot of times...
They didn't have social media, and they didn't have the internet like they did now that all could comparing notes and you know, jumping on each other.
I mean, I was young, but I was there for Empire and Jedi. I mean, I was very young, but I don't remember anybody talking smack about Empire or even Jedi. The Jedi hate came later when people look back at it and they're like, yeah, but Ewoks. I love
Ewoks.
I know.
Shut your mouth.
No, I'm saying that's what happened, though.
I know. I'm talking to those people. Shut your mouth. They're furry. They're the honey badgers of the Star Wars universe. They're cute. They're brushable, and they'll bite your damn face off and then use your head as a drum. They are awesome. They're much better than porgs.
So quickly the tides turned on Star Wars and Lucasfilm. Talks of a Rian Johnson trilogy became mostly just Rian Johnson talking about a trilogy.
Yes, over and over and over.
The California elites of Lucasfilm began to blame the fans. Surely it was the bumpkins in Nebraska, yes, Idaho, and Texas.
Oh, and Russian bots.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the Russian bots?
And surely it was just because of chauvinist Trumpsters and other deplorable white males. Again, Story Group fueling the fire.
Yes. And everybody kept saying this is not the case. And this is the thing that gets me. I saw a thing in Variety, and they were talking about how, Hollywood's so happy. They can't wait for Biden and for Harris because it's life or death now with all the bullying. And I'm just sitting here like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, I'm 100% sure people that are minorities get bullied all the time. I'm not saying they don't at all. I get that. I'm sure they do. However, we're seeing the exact same thing against anybody who disagrees with stuff like, I didn't like that cartoon. Why do they keep using prom all the time? You know, why did they make this change, that change? What happened with Star Wars? I didn't really care for it. It didn't matter what your reasons were for anything. It was automatically because you were a cis white male, you're an istophobe, you were there. They do this whole bullying, trying to dehumanize you tactics to either make you repent because you realize, I don't want people to think badly of me, or to turn everybody else against you. And it's really easy to get these hate mobs on Tumblr and now Twitter to just go try to cancel people over something. Even if you said this, I like the sky because I think it's blue and white, and they're deciding it's green that day. I mean, it doesn't matter. And that's what they did. They leveraged all these, wackadoos until the Raylos turned on them. And that's another video for another time.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's what they're doing, though, because you have people inside the Story Group. I mean, this totally makes sense. If you have people inside the Story Group, because we know they do it in animation studios, and we know they do it in comics and whatever. They have friends in the media.
Cartoon's worse, actually. Oh, yeah. Cartoon people are worse.
They can just make a phone call or shoot off an email or something. Or even some of these people might be in back channel Slack rooms and just being like, help us.
We even saw it with the Galaxy's Edge opening and the media because remember, people that had been male that were on these channels for years were not the ones that were invited to the openings of Galaxy's Edge. And then we saw, blow-ups and stuff on that, which understandable. But they were deliberately going out and trying to find all these people from different areas to bring them into Galaxy's Edge to make sure that, they got diverse people. And then we also, we know that they control what you can say and the hashtags and all that shit, which we'll talk about Galaxy's Edge in a minute, I know. But I'm just saying, we saw that with, established Star Wars channels. They would send the women in and to review the stuff instead of the guys. And then also they were, it'd be a real shame if you lost your media access.
Yep.
So you might want to watch out what you say there. And for firsthand experience that they'll get pissed if you say anything that wasn't glowing when you got in for Toy Story.
Yeah, like I said, we had the Pirates and Princesses podcast, which led to us partnering up and building the Kingdom Insider.
Literally built it.
And while working on the Kingdom Insider, I did have Disney Media Access. I literally ate with Disney PR people, and I was in and around them all the time. And I know how the machine works. And so, when I got pushed out.
Well, before that, you went to Toy Story Land.
Yeah.
And you did a review on it, like you were supposed to, and you gave it a good review, except you said, because even though you thought, well, this is like very carny, you were still very nice about it, and you said it's too hot. That's all you said. And what happened?
It's too hot. I got word through our partner, who had a closer association with Disney, that they were unhappy. That I could be 95% positive and 5% negative, but I wasn't allowed to be 90% positive and 10% negative. And they thought that saying that Toy Story Land was too hot when everything else was fine, that was a problem.
Right. And guess what? A month or so later, after they got many complaints about Toy Story Land being too hot, they added umbrellas and more shade.
Yeah, and we saw basically the controversy around Star Wars, from what I can see, and all the shill media crap that went down, destroyed Collider. I mean, it really did, because that led to the big blow up.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
And now we can see, it starts to make sense. If you're like, okay, the story group was looking for XYZ thing, and that's Kathleen Kennedy and her story group, because that was her group she put together, and she's not going to admit she's wrong, they're going to go out and cause all kinds of trouble. And we're seeing it. So the damage was done. Now, here's where Bob Iger comes in, because I'm like, Bob Iger is a businessman. What is he thinking?
Yep.
Well, here we go. The damage was done. Bob Iger had signed off on The Last Jedi. He immediately recoiled when he saw the reaction to Episode 8.
Real quick, too, Bob Iger was the one who Kathleen Kennedy got Bob Iger to agree to change Galaxy's Edge to being the classic trilogy, to trying to lean into the new Star Wars, because she said, because we're doing so well with The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
That's why they changed it.
Yeah. Talk about jumping the gun. I'm like, you're going to spend $1 billion on what's supposed to be a Harry Potter killer, but you're going to base it on planets that are in none of the movies, and only has an arm's length relationship with the Star Wars people. No, they expected to go Star Wars and have the same feeling in Galaxy's Edge as they do at Harry Potter, where you're literally walking into the movie set.
Right, and it's what you remember. And so you can live your Star Wars adventure that you played in your mind when you were a kid, or when you were talking with your friends or whatever.
Yeah, and they
you read in the books they deleted.
Yeah, right. So this was different than anything he had seen from Pixar or Marvel. This was mass disgust from consumers.
It's just a vocal minority. How many times did y'all hear that? You're all just a vocal minority. You're Russian bots. Remember that study? It was all Russian bots trying to take down Rian Johnson. Yeah.
Simultaneously, the director of the film was disparaging the consumers, attacking viewers. Yeah, Rian Johnson.
Yes, man, baby tears and all that shit.
While the public presentation of Protecting the Last Jedi by Disney continued, the writing was on the wall behind executive closed doors. As Solo lost its directors, again, fired by Kennedy, Iger's confidence in Kennedy had come to an end. She was scrubbed from his autobiography, and Iger reached out to Jon Favreau to begin running the ship. And I think he had an inkling, because he was like, even a couple of years ago, there's going to be a Star Wars slowdown.
No, that happened. Yeah, he said that. And then he also admitted that there was brand fatigue.
Yeah.
He admitted that too. He said there's going to be a slowdown. We're not doing too much. Less is more. He admitted that they were going to have to pull back on the Star Wars stories. Because remember, there were supposed to be all these Star Wars stories movies. And it wasn't the fact that Star Wars stories movies were bad. It was the fact that people were boycotting Solo to teach Disney a lesson about the sequel trilogy. But the takeaway ended up being exactly like what we said it would be.
Yeah.
We told people, it's not going to go the way you think. What's going to happen is they're just going to say all the stories movies are bad. And that's exactly what they did.
But what do we know?
Right.
Literally just spent time in and around the Disney marketing machine for years. Literally have had multiple, more than I could count, dinners and drinks with Disney people. And they all think pretty much the same, because they go through their training. And that is how they process information. Been telling you guys this. You don't want to believe it. I'm sorry.
Like I said,
this is how it works.
Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's a lie. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's negative.
Right. And Disney cannot digest negative information. Literally.
No, they cannot.
Literally at their marketing meetings, and they have rah-rah meetings every week.
Oh, God,
like on Mondays. At their meetings, you can present potentially negative information, but you have to candy coat it and you have to give a positive to offset the negative. Disney employees, the grunts, the mid-level managers are absolutely incapable. They are programmed to not digest bad news. So when people are coming to them with this stuff and they tell them, oh, it's just a bunch of man babies, a very vocal minority, don't worry about it, they very easily would believe it. They'd be like, I mean, Bob Iger's smarter than that.
So it would be like, oh my God, the aliens are invading. So what you're telling me is we have a whole new revenue source with potential guests, and we should probably make some new merchandise to appeal to that demographic.
Yeah. That's exactly it. They can't. It doesn't compute with them, and it just doesn't. And now a lot of those people, they got gone because you can't tell them, hey, Disney's in bad shape. You're probably not gonna have a job. Oh no, things are fine. It's all fine here. Now they're gone.
It's the dog meme with it's all fine here. It's all fine.
It's all fine.
This is fine.
So yeah, Solo lost the directors, confidence was scrubbed. In comes Jon Favreau. Favreau was the best bet Disney had out of anybody they'd worked with. He was the one who got the entire Marvel universe off the ground. While Kevin Feige receives and deserves much of the credit, it was Favreau who created the Marvel blueprint. That's true. Iron Man, that was Favreau. Favreau was the only director to have successfully created a holiday classic in decades.
Elf.
Favreau was working on new film technology that blew away anything in the market. In Iger's mind, Favreau was and is the modern day George Lucas.
Now they're working on those, the really cool thing with the Mandalorian, and they're going to use it for going forward, or those screens. So the actors are actually, the projections of the like when they're on the ship in season 3, all the projections around them, they were actually being projected. It wasn't like it was just green screen and they had nothing to interact with. They actually were projecting them into the environment. So to them, it was like, felt like being in the environment, and that's what appeared on the camera.
Yeah.
So, that was definitely a George Lucas thing to do.
Yeah, because Lucas was always about, I think in some ways, the technology got ahead of him because he was always about pushing technology, sometimes over storytelling, which is kind of, the drawbacks of the
That's why real sets were better in the originals.
Yeah, but he wanted to see what he could do. He wanted to see how far he could push it. And unfortunately, I think he went too far one way with the prequels. And he needed
back when innovation, invention, that kind of stuff was a thing, Yep. Pushing the boundaries, trying to be creative, those days. And
the other plus of Jon Favreau is that he's actually squeaky clean. He avoided problems like Lasseter.
Right, and he's really a pro fan and pro. He himself is a fan. He's pro Star Wars because he loves it.
He just wants to make his stuff, make his movies.
He wants to make good stories and tell good and have good characters, like everybody keeps asking for. So he's the devil.
He's the devil. In 2017, Favreau had begun talks to produce a series for Disney Plus based on Star Wars. Iger had arranged for the talks and was ready to back Favreau with a theatrical release level budget in an attempt to give their future streaming service something to get it going. Ignore the hokey talking points from Disney about Favreau wanting to randomly do online streaming series about Star Wars Westerns. That's not how things work at the level of a director. That's true.
It's not, yeah.
It's not how things work at that level because the guy was doing billion-dollar movies like with the Jungle Book and working on the Marvel. Yeah.
He's not going to be like, sure, I'll do a TV show. At the time, they originally planned these stuff for TV until they decided to do the streaming service.
Well, The Mandalorian was probably the Boba Fett movie.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Just,
I think they've kind of talked around it but said that.
Yeah, and they bring Boba Fett into it. So Favreau is likely the most respected big-budget director in the world. He doesn't ask to lower himself in doing online streaming series unless there's already a very big plan in place.
I think also him being a fan of it helped too.
Mm-hmm. In Iger's opinion, Netflix represented the biggest threat to Disney over time, and the company was about to focus huge amounts of attention to basically Disney+. Favreau was placed in contact with Dave Filoni by Kathleen Kennedy. He was a decent enough writer, had worked on some animated series, seemed to know a lot about Star Wars, and didn't rock the boat.
Yeah, didn't rock the boat's key. Because he was on set with Rian Johnson and everything else.
Favreau wanted someone who knew Star Wars inside and out, and since he wasn't interested at all in the story group...
Good move there, Favreau.
Good move. Filoni would do. Kennedy was busy with the big stuff, and the series on a streaming service was below her and her attention. Little did she know, Iger and Favreau had cooked up a big idea. So basically, it sounds like Iger, backdoor... Okay, so this happens at companies.
This is funny. You train your replacement, don't know it.
You train your replacement.
Is that where you're going?
Yes.
Sorry.
A lot of times at companies, when they can't afford to get rid of a person, especially if it's a higher level position like a middle management position or a management position, a lot of times what they'll do is bring in a quote unquote underling to do something that's not quite your job, but kind of related to it. But or the person seems vastly overqualified for the position they're in. The reason they're bringing them in there is they're trying to low-key replace you. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, I love it too. Like, we had this experience where you're supposed to talk to them and bring them up to speed, but then they act like they don't have to listen to you because they already know they're above you and they don't have to listen to you.
Yeah.
Hello, friends.
Yeah, right.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've had that happen. The person comes in, they've already had a conversation with the boss or whatever.
And you weren't informed on what the conversation was.
It's your replacement. You just haven't figured it out. You're the last person to find out.
And then you're trying to talk to them and see what they could do to help. And then they're basically they just treat you like crap because they're like, well, I'm over you anyway. And I know I am.
Yep. Like, I'm staying, you're going. So whatever. You'll get yours someday. After the public reception failure for The Last Jedi, after the DVD and Blu-ray sales tanked, after Solo's directors were fired, after Solo became the first ever Star Wars film to lose money, Kathleen Kennedy's reign was over. Yes, she was still the figurehead, and yes, she had a contract extension. However, Bob Iger went to such a degree that he even publicly killed expectations of future Star Wars releases in the near term after the sequel trilogy.
Which is what we were talking about.
Because he knew, like, oh my God, we can't not put another movie out there and have it bomb.
So what happened then is Kathleen Kennedy turned around and made this deal with Headland. And that wasn't even brought up in this. But then all of a sudden on their friendly media outlets, it was either Variety or Hollywood Reporter or one of those ones, it gets a leaked, exclusive leak that Headland's doing Star Wars. And like Kathleen Kennedy, why'd they leave her stay on? Because they'll try to use you're against strong women, you're a misogynist. They'll try to use that same stupid argument they used on all the fans against Disney. And so what they did was they went behind Disney's back and announced Headland was getting her own series. And then from what we heard from Pro and from other people that were close by, the Bobs didn't know anything about it. Yeah. Shit hit the fan, especially since Headland was associated with... what's his name?
Oh, Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. Yep. And they were in legal battle already. It was really, really, really not a good idea. But they can't say, oh, we're not doing that now because they'll say you're against diverse women, and they'll make and guaranteed that's what they'll do. I'm guaranteed that it was threatened. And that's the way that they play this game. They just try to do whatever underhand thing they can to claw as much ground as they can, and they'll definitely use people as a shield.
I mean, it might not be an outright civil war, but it definitely is a Cold War.
Yeah.
In that there are some underhanded machinations going on.
They're trying to get as much territory, scrape as much territory as they can.
Right. So Kennedy was allowed to stay on, bitter and mostly powerless, as removing her was deemed too potentially damaging. Yeah, because they'd be like, you kicked out the most powerful woman in Hollywood.
Right,
Disney.
And not just that. Oh, I didn't even say that. But, I was thinking about that too. She keeps getting mad when they give Favreau credit, and she's like, nah, it was my idea. Baby Yoda was my idea, but Baby Yoda was supposed to be a girl.
Yep.
By the way.
Yep. As the toy sales crashed, the video game revenue cratered, and The Rise of Skywalker barely made half of The Force Awakens
Still
box
haven't
office.
seen it.
Still have no desire to see it. Disney execs began working with Favreau more and more. Kennedy would help develop some minor Star Wars properties going forward.
Not just that, the whole Headland crap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, which supposedly ties into this High Republic garbage, too, which is all Story Group. Favreau and the Star Wars guru Filoni were given the green light to go big with their series, The Mandalorian. For Burbank, this was the Hail Mary. If The Mandalorian failed, Star Wars was likely to be unpopular for years. If The Mandalorian failed, Disney Plus was likely to limp out of the gate. A rare move was made to give Favreau complete power over The Mandalorian. Kennedy could only provide him with notes. She could not dictate anything about the series. In one set of notes, she recommended going with Boba Fett as the lead right out of the gate. Favreau overrode. So people were like, well, she was there. She was there on set. She was overseeing this. It's like limited power. Right.
And the thing is, when this came out and we had Baby Yoda, and Baby Yoda became Grogu now, but at the time Baby Yoda became the big phenomenon it was. What was one of the first things Iger did? Got himself on the cover of Time magazine with Baby Yoda.
So that even clicks, because it's like, if he was working more closely with Favreau as this backup plan, basically Favreau was plan B, because he knew plan A was like, it's just let her do her thing, try to minimize the damage, but meanwhile we're going to go try to save Star Wars. And that does come down because Iger was asleep at the wheel, but he probably thought, like everybody else, Kathleen Kennedy
Well, he admitted that.
Credits.
He admitted in another interview, I forget what it was, but he had admitted that he was, it was ultimately on him. I mean, I remember he had admitted that at one point.
I mean, who would have thought, again, given her pedigree, who would have thought she would have fucked up Star Wars as badly as she did, or letting it, screwed up as bad? And I was actually excited about Kathleen Kennedy. I'm like, well, she worked with Spielberg, she worked with Lucas. This is going to be fine. Things are going to be fine. And George Lucas picked his replacement, and it's going to be fine, not realizing that, it was going to turn into
Before we get to the next paragraph, too, I was going to mention with Iger, the other thing that Disney kept trying to tell everybody was, no, the merchandise, we knew it was going to be a hit. And this goes along with what he's saying here, too. They didn't know it was going to be a hit. It was the Hail Mary pass they were hoping for, but they didn't know. There was stuff going on. There was weird shit going on with the toys because there was nothing ready. And it's always say, something would have got leaked. People, they knew stuff for Grogu and different characters that they had merchandise ready for that were surprises. The only thing that I think that they might have, really kept under wraps was the Luke thing. But they had other characters stuff for surprises and they had merchandise and stuff ready to go for when they aired in the episode. They had no Baby Yoda stuff ready at all. And they kept saying, we knew it was going to be big, but we held off so nothing would get leaked. Well, Star Wars for years had toys that came out and nothing got leaked. I think they didn't want to put the money into it because they didn't know if it would work. And I think it was the toy companies. And I'll tell you why. Hasbro usually works with Disney. They were losing money. When the first stuff came out for Baby Yoda, the first prototypes you saw, it was Mattel.
Yeah, Mattel was like, we have a chance to maybe get in the Star Wars action. Yeah, because Hasbro was like, we lost a ton of money on Last Jedi stuff.
So it was Mattel that came out first. Then Hasbro came back. And then not long after, the deal was signed again with Hasbro. They made a big thing about how they renewed their deal with Hasbro. So I think Hasbro just wasn't going to play ball, given the situation and what they lost. And then they used Mattel. They threw Mattel a bone. So Mattel thought they were going to get it. And then they were just doing it to try to bribe Hasbro into falling into line. But bullshit, the toys weren't ready because they were trying to keep it quiet. They lost tons of money, and they hurried up and scurried and put a bunch of print-on-demand shit on Shop Disney.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
Copying people that were making money on it on Etsy and stuff who had stuff ready.
Yep. So before we get into the Galaxy's Edge part of it, a little bit of backstory here with Galaxy's Edge. Now, one, Bob Iger's hubris. He said that Galaxy's Edge was not going to take much marketing.
Yep.
He said, I'm thinking maybe I should just tweet its opening and that'll be enough. Iger said on the earnings call on Tuesday. I think we're going to end up with an incredibly popular and in-demand product with these two new lands. That did not happen. And the behind-the-scenes drama, now we had done other videos on that because there were actually retired Disney Imagineers that went on podcasts and said the original plans for Galaxy's Edge was it was based on the original trilogy. It was the Star Wars everybody remembered, and you can see pieces of that. I mean, you can see with the Falcon that this probably was supposed to be Docking Bay 94.
Oh, yeah, Mos Eisley
Cantina, and that Batuu was supposed to be Tatooine. You can see pieces of it. But again, it was Kathleen Kennedy and the Story Group that put pressure on Bob Iger to put pressure on the Imagineers to change it all. And the Imagineer that they talked with said they were angry because they'd spent 2 or 3 years developing an original trilogy-based land like Harry Potter, only to have it be something based on, it wasn't even based on the sequels. It was in the sequel era, but they were totally different planets. But they also kind of left the door open, and you look at it, and you got to wonder if this wasn't Iger's out. They could very easily retheme Galaxy's Edge to be an original trilogy.
Yeah, very much so.
Just swap out the movie and the Falcon ride, change some of the animatronics and Rise of Resistance. You could do it.
Yeah, easily.
So anyway, with that in mind, let's talk about Galaxy's Edge. In the midst of all this, Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland had opened in May, whereas Iger had announced to the world that crowds would flock to the expansion without any advertising.
Right. We pulled that up so you could see it.
Yep. Disneyland had gone they had gone under multi-million-dollar renovations to handle the increased crowd sizes.
They did. They got rid of all the Run Disney events at Disneyland because they put Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. Like Walt Disney World has 4 parks, and they put it in Hollywood Studios there. Disneyland Resort has this Disneyland California Adventure. And they changed the Halloween offerings, too. So the Halloween party was moved to California Adventure.
The train, they rerouted the train. Right. They rerouted Rivers of America. They did a lot to make room because Disneyland does not have a lot of room.
No.
California Adventure used to be the parking lot. And they didn't have a lot of room, so they're like, we got to do what we can do to make this fit. Attendance to Disneyland actually dropped The destruction of Star Wars was complete. Now expectations were that The Mandalorian might fail as well. Iger had been embarrassed. Star Wars was a failing franchise, and they had just used up the rest of Disneyland's free acreage on a development that actually cost them attendance.
Now, there's a couple things here, though. I mean, if you're going to be fair. If we're going to be fair about this, it was colossally, monumentally stupid to open the parks when they weren't finished. That was beyond moronic because both the parks opened. They didn't open at the same time. Disneyland opened theirs first and Disney World opened theirs, but they only opened with the Millennium Falcon attraction. The one that everybody wanted, the Rise of the Resistance, that was what everybody was coming for because it was, they were excited about that. Didn't open for months later. And then when that opened, it opened at Disney World first and then later at Disneyland. And then it kept breaking down. It was not ready to open. We know in Disneyland, the track was put upside down by accident.
Yes.
And contrary to what these dumbasses will tell you, it's magnetic. You still have to have a track under the floor. It doesn't just go by itself.
I know.
God,
it's
these
magic.
People are stupid.
It runs on pixie dust in dreams.
That's right. Clap if you believe in Disney. Clap if you love Kylo Ren. It's just it is what it is. It was really dumb how it was handled.
Yeah, it was.
They tried to blame it on the stupid hurricane in Florida. That would have maybe explained 1 week. That wouldn't explain everything else. Most of it was because people were tired and sick of Star Wars, and they raised prices on stuff. Yeah. They knew they were going to get gouged, and they didn't open the whole thing at
blackout dates.
That's right. They had blackout dates for certain types of pass holders. They had blackout dates for their cast members. They were all blacked out, so they couldn't visit. They were actually lifting those to try to get crowds in there so they can say that the crowds are back. Yeah. So, if you're going to be fair, there's a couple of reasons for that. But go ahead.
So while Kennedy became embittered over the success of the one Star Wars property she had no control over, again being The Mandalorian, The Mandalorian did really well. And, the Baby Yoda toys sold really well. Her story group had essentially been gutted. So in 2019, Kiri Hart fled Lucasfilm.
Right, everybody's like, where'd she go?
Yeah, and now this makes sense. Kiri Hart fled to join Rian Johnson's T Street Studio. So remember when Pro said that she was basically coaching Rian Johnson behind the scenes, and that's how we wound up with The Last Jedi. She went to go work for Rian Johnson.
Right, because remember there was all these articles and people doing videos. Where did she go? Where did Kiri Hart go? She just disappeared. Where did she go? She went to join Rian Johnson. Yeah,
so this is one of those pieces that it starts to click now when you think about it, because it's like, wait a second, why would anybody have, with half a brain, do what they did in The Last Jedi and destroy Luke Skywalker? Well, when you've got the story group headed up by people that have an anti-Luke agenda.
And don't care about Star Wars to begin with.
No, and Kathleen Kennedy's got them working with Rian Johnson on the movie. It all makes sense. They haven't produced any good movies and any successes in 2 years. Don't count on them getting a trilogy anytime soon.
Yeah, that disappeared.
Yeah, Kennedy continues to work on more series with Star Wars, but she would have no more theatrical releases. And Favreau has complete control over whatever he wants to do with the brand, and that is going forward. Like, look at most of the shows announced, except for the Leslie Headland one, seem like they're Favreau's shows, or the Favreau Filoni verse.
Well, if it's not Favreau and Filoni, then they're trying to double down on anime with that Visions, and they're hiring Japanese studios because they're like, shit, what our comics and books don't sell. What's popular? Manga and anime. Let's go do that.
Well, and then talking about Indiana Jones 5. Now they did announce supposedly that Indiana Jones 5 is happening, but Pro put an article out there before saying behind the scenes that Steven Spielberg basically was not signing off on anything, because again, Spielberg is good friends with George Lucas, and he probably saw how, and Lucas was despondent. I mean, not being mentioned in this article was Lucas saying that he felt like Disney were white slavers, right, and they destroyed his franchise.
Yeah, and then Indiana Jones was his other big one. Now we're getting a game from Machine Games, and then Bethesda under the Lucasfilm Games umbrella. We're getting a game, and there is a rumor that they're trying to get Chris Pratt to play Indiana Jones for a Disney Plus show, but that's all rumor. Yep. Don't know. Yeah,
so here's the thing, because there have been people tried to debunk the Civil War. I'm like, I'm sorry.
That's going on.
Look at the evidence. Again, look at what's going on here.
They don't want to look at evidence. They just want to say, you're mean, you're negative, you're a racist, istophobic, misogynist, whatever.
You've got the story group going in one direction, Kathleen Kennedy's people, with the stuff that's just frankly not resonating with people. They destroyed Galaxy's Edge initially. I mean, it's people are going, obviously, but it would have been a huge success right out of the gate if it was classic trilogy.
And now we're hearing they're trying to put these characters from the Mandalorian and stuff in to try to get people in there.
Yeah, so that, I mean, they can still pull it out of a tailspin, but we've got that juxtaposed with, the Mandalorian that, treats the original trilogy with great respect and feels very much like a continuation.
People that are working on it, they said the people that are working on it and the cast and crew are themselves fans of the original, and it shows.
This is what happens when you put people in charge of franchises who are not actually fans of the franchise. They just want to use the franchise for activism or some social whatever. And this is literally, Star Wars was almost destroyed because of these people. Comic book publishers, animation studios, video game publishers, stop hiring these people, especially if it's an existing franchise, because they're not going to act in the best interest of your company.
If you really want to push it, you have them do their own thing.
Yeah, just do your own thing. But it's easier to take a shortcut. And it doesn't matter. The damage, like with Kiri Hart, the damage is done. They're trying to undo it. But how many billions of dollars did Disney lose because of their shitty attitude toward the franchise and the fandom? Billions and billions of dollars lost. Okay, so Pro says, some say there's a civil war at Lucasfilm. Others deny it and claim it's all a grandiose lie. I don't think so. In reality, behind the doors of Lucasfilm is a fractured studio of 3 ideological divisions. They're the old-timers who remember the days of George Lucas. They are the apolitical, non-ideological artisans. For those, most have kept their heads down and tried to keep themselves from being fired or disparaged by the Kathleen Kennedy crew.
Which we've heard from that one person who
Rensler,
yeah, it's like that. And and the people that were there for George Lucas are older, and those are usually the ones who know to keep politics out of business and everything else.
The only time they trot these people out is when they want to use them for something. We saw this disgusting behavior at Marvel Comics. They dragged Stan Lee out like a year before his death to low-key condemn Comicsgate or whatever.
Yeah, I think they don't tell them the whole story.
No.
We saw with other actors associated with certain like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that. They told them, they're coming out and saying this stuff. Of course they're mad when they think that's what people are saying because it's such a shitty thing and you're like, what the hell? And are some people saying these things? Probably. Is it the majority of people? Hell to the no. They're just like a small group and they're using these extremists and they're saying that they're the ones that are speaking for everyone. And of course they're going to condemn it because it's a really shitty thing. I condemn it too. I do condemn it.
Well, they dragged Stan Lee out and they're probably like, hey, Stan, what do you think about racism? Because we got a lot of racist comic book fans not telling him the whole story.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And of
Clark
course,
Gregg did the same thing.
Yeah, so of course he's gonna say, well, I don't think racism's good. Of course,
most
normal
people
don't think it's good, except for the people who claim to be anti-racist that are some of the most racist people out there. So the Kathleen Kennedy crew, on the other hand, are the hires since 2012, the ones who held the keys to the sequel trilogy, but now have been relegated to comic book releases and young adult novels.
AKA the High Republic.
The High Republic. The third group is the Favreau Filoni bunch. This new group is comprised of Favreau loyalists brought in and generally working outside of the confines of Lucasfilm. They get to bypass Kennedy and the KK crew, and their budget comes straight from the top of Disney.
They're the ones making money for Disney. They're the ones actually bringing it.
Yeah, so this sheds a lot of light. And again,
sorry it was so long, but there was so much to cover, and then we added some things we knew played into this as well that Pro hadn't put in.
Yeah, so I'm going to put a link to this article. You can read it for yourself in the comments.
Please follow Pirates and Princesses.
Follow Pirates and Princesses. We try to be objective. Again, we've worked in and around Disney for years, different divisions of it, different things. Worked on Disney Comics for a number of years. We know people at the company. Contrary to what the Pixie Dusters want to tell you, we're not talking out of our asses.
No, and if something's good, we'll say it's good. If something's not good, we'll say it's not. I mean, we're not going to say everything's bad just because, we're trying to show you. We actually try to be honest. Imagine that.
I will tell you that Disney's handling of Star Wars up until The Mandalorian was atrocious. That I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, why? Situations with like Pablo Hidalgo. It's like, why would you let a Disney employee run at the mouth like that and chase off millions of dollars? Mm-hmm. And this has to stop. They got to get
Brie Larson and everything else too. It's like they just keep allowing this bad behavior over like Marvel and stuff too, and they wonder like, why isn't it doing so well?
Yeah, Marvel Comics. Yeah, because Marvel Studios, that's again, there probably is a Marvel version of this too, where Kevin Feige was put in charge over all of Marvel because of all the shit going on at Marvel Comics. it's the same kind of mentality. You've got Disney employees behaving in a very un-Disney-like fashion.
Well, meanwhile, Disney's like that. What was that kid that was in that special about being friends and was it Kazoo? What was it called?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like a kid. He's looking every which direction. Like, I don't know what the problem is. I see it nowhere.
Yeah, and they got to get their house in order. And I think a lot of it comes down to Disney growing too fast and being too arrogant not paying attention. They're just like, well, we own Star Wars, and that prints money. It's like it only prints money if the right people are in charge.
Well, what's funny to me is we have no money. We have to cut everything. We're cutting the Magical Express. We're cutting all these, this stuff that we're giving guests. We're cutting cast members. We're cutting entertainment. We're cutting it all. But we have money to threaten politicians with. So,
Right. That's the next thing. Disney, stay apolitical. You're going to lose money getting too political, but that's a whole nother
do good things and stop being dicks.
All right, so we're going to wrap this one up.
Yep.
Okay, so
or vaginas. I don't want to judge.
Don't judge. Don't judge. So we're going to wrap this up. Big thanks to WDW Pro for shedding some light on the situation. Again, check out the original article and the link in the comments. See you later.
Bye.